You know what's strange? Some of the most perceptive people you will ever meet never learned it anywhere. The friend who asks if you're all right before you've said a word, the one who meets someone at a party, talks to him for 10 minutes, and tells you in the car that something about him doesn't sit right. And 6 months later, he's right. The person who walks into their own house hears one sentence from the next room and already knows what kind of evening this is going to be. Nobody taught them that. There was no class, no book, no years of meditation. They learned it because at some point in their lives, they had to. Psychologists have started calling this traumatic intelligence. And if you've never heard that term before, that's exactly why this video matters. Here's the psychological premise. Trauma doesn't only break people. In many cases, it also sharpens them. Research in developmental psychology suggests that children who grow up in unpredictable or emotionally complex environments develop a heightened sensitivity to social cues, emotional patterns, and everything communicated without words. Their brains, specifically the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, are wired early to detect signals most people completely miss. The result is a form of intelligence that looks almost invisible from the outside but runs incredibly deep on the inside. It doesn't show up on an IQ test, but it lets you understand people at a level most people never reach. And it develops so early that you never register it as unusual. You just assume everyone sees what you see. They don't. Here are 9 signs you're carrying it. The first sign is that you can read someone's emotional state from their voice alone. Someone says hello. That's all. One word, and you already know. You know when I'm fine isn't fine. You hear the pause before someone answers a question they weren't ready for. You can tell from 3 words on a phone call whether this is a good day or a bad one. Most people need the whole conversation. You needed the first second. Psychologists call the mechanism behind this hypervigilance. It develops when the brain learns early that the emotional temperature of a room can change without warning, and that noticing early is what keeps you safe. So sound became information. A door closing had a volume that meant something. Footsteps had a pace that meant something. This isn't anxiety. It's a listening system, built young, running ever since. And what it gives you is genuinely rare. You are almost impossible to lie to over the phone. You catch things in 2 minutes that other people miss in 2 hours. People call you intuitive. What you actually have is a form of perception most people were never required to develop. The second sign is that you are always several steps ahead in a conversation. Before a difficult talk, you've already had it. In your head, twice. You imagine what they'll say. You plan your answer. Then you plan your answer to their answer. You already know which version of this conversation you can handle and which one you need to steer away from. Everyone gets nervous before a hard conversation. You do something different. You model it. This makes complete sense developmentally. When saying the wrong thing could change the mood of an entire household, the brain learns to run conversations before they happen. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for prediction and planning, develops early and stays busy. This isn't overthinking, it's forecasting, and it means you are almost never caught off guard. You walk into rooms already prepared for 4 different versions of what might happen inside them. That's not a nervous habit. That's a strategic mind that started training before you could name what it was doing. The third sign is that you have an unusual capacity for honest self-examination. Something goes wrong and you look inward first. A friend goes quiet. A message stays unanswered. A meeting feels off. And before you blame anyone else, you check yourself. What did I say? What did I miss? Was it me? Most people protect themselves from that question. You've been asking it your whole life. There's a reason for this, and it isn't weakness. Researchers studying children in unstable homes found something counterintuitive. Those children tend to look for the fault in themselves. Because if the problem is you, it can be fixed. If the problem is the adult you depend on, then nothing is safe. Self-examination wasn't self-hatred. It was hope. That instinct never expired, and it turned you into something rare. You are one of the very few people who will genuinely consider that you were wrong. You apologize when you actually mean it. You update. You don't defend a position just because it's yours. Most people never develop that. The fourth sign is that you are the calmest person in the room when everything falls apart. The accident, the diagnosis, the call at 2 in the morning. Everyone else reacts. You go quiet. Your voice steadies, your thinking narrows, and you do what needs to be done. Afterwards, people tell you they don't understand how you stayed so composed. You've never been able to explain it. Here's the explanation. Researchers call it stress inoculation. A nervous system that has moved through difficulty repeatedly builds efficient pathways for handling more of it. Chaos isn't foreign to you, it has a shape you recognize, and recognition produces calm. Then, 2 days later, when everything is fine again, it hits you. That isn't instability. Your system postponed the feeling until you were safe enough to have it. You can hold a house together while it's burning and fall apart the following Tuesday over something that doesn't matter at all. But understand what this means about you. In the moments that count most, when everyone else freezes, you function. Whole families have gotten through the worst weeks of their lives because someone like you was in the room. Sign 5. Stop here for a moment. Everything you've heard so far, the listening, the anticipation, the self-honesty, the steadiness, I want to be clear about what these are. They are not weaknesses dressed up as strengths. They are genuine cognitive and emotional adaptations documented across psychological research. And they tell a story about how remarkably responsive the human brain is to its environment. You didn't build this intelligence out of luxury, you built it because your environment required it. If you've already recognized yourself, what was the moment you realized you saw things other people didn't? And keep watching, because the remaining signs reveal something even deeper about how this intelligence shaped not just what you noticed, but who you became. The 6th sign is that you are the person people trust with the truth. Not small talk, the real thing. Colleagues you barely know end up telling you about their marriage. Friends call you when something has gone badly wrong. You have sat with people through the worst weeks of their lives more times than you can count, and you were good at it every time. This isn't a coincidence. It's another expression of this intelligence. When a child grows up managing the emotions of the adults around them, psychologists call it parentification. What it produces is an adult who can hold someone else's pain without flinching. You don't panic. You don't rush to fix it. You don't reach for the hollow reassurance people grab when suffering makes them uncomfortable. You just stay. Most people genuinely cannot do that, and you'll notice the traffic mostly runs one direction. You handle your own things quietly, alone, usually before anyone knew there was something to handle. Psychologists call that internalized resourcefulness. When support was inconsistent, the brain stopped routing safety through people and started routing it through competence. So you became the steady one. For everybody. That's not a small thing to be. The 7th sign is that you carry a level of awareness most people never have to hold. This is the part almost nobody talks about. You don't get to walk into a room and just be in it. You process it. Every room, every conversation, every day. Other people spend an evening. You spend an evening reading one. And it doesn't switch off. Not at dinner, not on holiday, not when everything is objectively fine. So you come home from something completely ordinary and you're not tired the way other people are tired. You're depleted in a way that sleep doesn't fully fix. People who love you don't understand why a family lunch took something out of you. That isn't fragility. That's the cost of an instrument that never stops taking readings. And here's what deserves saying out loud, because probably nobody ever has. You've been carrying this quietly for years without anyone acknowledging that you were carrying anything, and you kept showing up anyway, kept being the calm one, kept being kind to people who had no idea what it cost you. That's not a small thing either. The 8th sign is that you have an unusually accurate sense of who is genuine. You meet someone and you know, not always immediately and not always in words, but you know. You notice the story that changed slightly, the kindness with a purpose behind it, the confidence covering something, the warmth that stops at the mouth and never reaches the eyes. And you are rarely wrong. That's the strange weight of it. Not that you're wrong about people, that you almost never are. Research on children raised in volatile homes found they become measurably faster at reading hostility in faces than other children. Their brains prioritized that ability because it had immediate consequences. In adulthood, it extends outward, into who is honest, who is performing, who is safe. Cognitive psychologists call this adaptive skepticism. It isn't paranoia. Paranoia has nothing behind it. Yours was built on evidence you never asked to collect. So your trust is earned slowly, through consistency, over a longer stretch than people realize they're being watched. And that's exactly why the people in your life are the right ones. You didn't collect them, you chose them. The ninth sign is that you are incapable of living a life that doesn't mean something. Other people can tolerate a job that means nothing if the money is good. They can move through years without asking whether any of it matters. You have never been able to do that. When your life drifts away from purpose, you don't just become unhappy. Something in you begins to shut down quietly, and you feel it in your body before you have words for it. Research on post-traumatic growth found that a significant portion of people who navigate serious adversity emerge with deeper relationships, clearer priorities, and a far stronger sense of what matters and why. You asked the hardest questions about life earlier than most people ever have to, and once someone has asked them, a shallow life stops being possible. That isn't ingratitude. That's depth. What's interesting about all 9 of these signs is how consistently they get misread. The person who hears everything looks anxious. The one who prepares looks like they overthink. The one who examines themselves looks insecure. The one who stays calm looks cold. The one who never asks for help looks distant. The one who trusts slowly looks closed off. You've probably been called most of those. Too much, too quiet, too intense, hard to read. None of those people were looking at what was actually there. Traumatic intelligence isn't something to celebrate at the expense of acknowledging what created it. The sharpness was real. So was the cost. Nobody would choose this education, and anyone who tells you the pain was worth it usually hasn't lived your version of it. But what psychology invites us to understand is this. You were not simply damaged by what you went through. You were, in very specific and measurable ways, changed by it. More perceptive, more steady, harder to deceive, and far more useful to the people around you than you have ever given yourself credit for. The perceptiveness you carry, the calm you bring, the way you understand people, none of it is a coincidence. It's the architecture of a mind that had to grow quickly and did. You were never broken. You were built, quickly, under pressure, by circumstances you didn't choose. And what came out of it sees more of the world than most people ever will. That's not damage. That's what survival looks like when it turns into something else. If this put words to something you've been carrying quietly for a long time, leave a comment with the sign that resonated most. See you in the next one.